name is George, and today I'm going to present and talk about anthropogenic risks to our civilization. Now, the single most dangerous factor for our civilization is, of course, us. What a surprise! What makes us so dangerous? Well, because we possess great power in terms of resources that enable us to alter the environment around us and employ technologies that could pose a threat to our own existence. Now, the second issue is our sheer numbers. There are billions of us, and the power of such a vast population should not be underestimated. However, we are not all equal in our impact on the world. Some individuals have a greater influence than others. Nevertheless, everyone desires access to more goods and services. People in developed countries aspire to live like the wealthy, while those in less developed countries aspire to live like the people in the developed countries. Now, unfortunately, this is unsustainable, and there are insufficient resources to fulfill these aspirations. Now, I must mention that these are current existential anthropogenic risks as of June 2023. The list is subject to rapid change. For instance, the nuclear threat could shiftily rise to the top of the list. Okay, so at the top of the list comes the threat of pandemics, whether generated by humans or occurring naturally, but with a spread facilitated by us. Do you think that COVID-19 was bad? Well, think again. There are pandemic scenarios that could lead to the collapse of the current human civilization. And no, I'm not talking about some lab leak in an Asian laboratory. It has happened before with the Amerindian civilization collapsing due to disease, mainly smallpox brought by Europeans, causing the death of around 90-95% of the population. Now, that is what a serious collapse looks like. But what makes us so vulnerable to a serious pandemic? This subject deserves its own video, and I will just highlight a few important points here nevertheless. First of all is the urbanization, the increasing human population and its density, which is likely to continue rising until around 2050, maybe even 2100. We also live in increasing crowded cities, which increases the chances of person-to-person transmission. Currently, 56% of humans live in cities, and by 2050, this number is projected to increase to 70%. With more crammed people together, the possibilities for a virus to spread and mutate also increase. There is also the globalization. This transport network enables a virus or a bacterium to spread globally within a matter of days. In 2014, for example, the first case of Ebola was carried to the United States via air travel, ultimately resulting in the infection of 2 healthcare workers. Destruction of the natural environment, coupled with climate change, also brings us in contact with germs that were previously isolated. This raised the risks of zoonotic spillovers, where diseases transfer from animals to humans. And this is, for example, what happened with the HIV virus. There's also the healthcare infrastructure that is built with efficiency in mind rather than resilience. As we witnessed it during the last pandemic, a higher number of infected people can easily overwhelm hospitals and healthcare workers. There are no millions of extra beds or hundreds of thousands of additional medical staff ready available for a pandemic. Now, there is more to say about this matter, such as antibiotic resistance, misinformation, disinformation, and so on. But I will stop here. Anyway, you saw what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. For me, this was just an introduction, a glimpse of what's to come. So far, we have been merely fortunate. Next on the list of existential threat is the artificial intelligence, AI. Now, this is an emerging threat that is difficult to predict where it will lead at the moment. The fact that top specialists in the field express concerns should make us worried. In this case, I would split the threats from the AI into 2 categories: direct and indirect AI threats. The direct ones are relatively straightforward, where artificial intelligence takes control of our critical infrastructure, manipulates us in some various ways, as Yuval Harari says, initiates a nuclear war or other catastrophic scenarios. I would argue that this is a long-term threat. by which I mean 10 or 20 years. There are concerns that individuals or companies could develop AI that suddenly takes over. Personally, I believe that cutting-edge AI will likely always be under the watchful eye of the government, as it would require significant amounts of hardware and electricity, making it easily detectable. However, this doesn't mean that we can place complete trust in our governments. The second category of a threat from AI is a sort of indirect one, which occurs on a much shorter time scale, before the singularity. That's the moment when artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence. In such a scenario, which I find more plausible, AI could have a profound impact on our civilization, potentially disrupting the social structure that bind us together. Now, this could happen, for example, through massive job losses due to AI or through rapid and future increase in inequality. Such events could lead to political instability, social unrest, conflicts, and wars. The third threat that could lead to a collapse is the global climate change started by us. I believe that compared with other threats, people generally seem to be aware of this issue and they are taking significant steps to slow it down. This includes using renewable energy, adopting electric vehicles, implementing building isolation, and making changes in agriculture. However, I don't think progress is happening quickly enough. Global climate change will bring about global warming, extreme weather events, rising sea levels, desertification, and a biodiversity decline. All these factors will contribute to a series of crises such as famine, pandemics, wars, economic challenges, mass migration, political and social unrest, and more. Now, the last risk I will mention and discuss is related to governance, economic instability, and social instability. There is a dangerous threat looming over us, which is economic inequality. Historically, it tends to increase during times of peace and stability until it reaches a tipping point when one of the great leverers steps in. The great leverers are state collapses, wars, pandemics, or revolution. This occurs due to the failure of the government to address diverse challenges, hindering effective responses to a series of risks and exacerbating these impacts. Let me provide an example of such a failure: the economical crisis of 2008. The biggest failure was not merely economic, but also ethical and judicial. It showed people that you can play with others' money, you can make them poorer, you can crush the economy, you can steal, and you can get away without consequences, even receiving some bonuses on the side. Now, such events undermine the social contract, erode trust in authorities, and destabilize our civilization. Now, there are other threats such as nuclear war, ecological collapse, nanotechnology, geoengineering, pollution, and more. In future videos, I will take a closer look of each one of these threats. Otherwise, this video would become too long and you will fall asleep. Some of these threats have been present since the beginning of our species, and they have occurred before, so we have at least some vague ideas of what they bring. Pandemics have happened in the past, and there is a vast literature documenting their influence on our civilization. Global climate change has also occurred in the distant past, although direct sources on its effects are limited. However, we have information about local climate changes and archaeological evidence related to the global climate changes. Therefore, for better or worse, we have some experience with them. The difference now is that these threats might occur on a global scale, impacting not just a country or a region, although this impact can still be significant. Other threats, such as artificial intelligence and nuclear war, are relatively new, and we are learning now how to deal and mitigate them. Artificial intelligence and nuclear power are new technologies that have the potential to assist us in facing challenges such as pandemic, climate change, economical collapse, economic and social instability, and global governance failure. The way we chose to use them will ultimately be our own choice. Artificial intelligence is somewhat different because it might be the first technology that can make decisions for itself. Nevertheless, we still have a say in the matter. For now, let's take advantage of that.